Generally speaking, I don't like socialism. Plain talk. If you've listened to enough of my content, that should seem pretty obvious. The thing is, the principles behind socialism sound tempting sometimes. The idea being that as a society, you know, our aim as the society is as best as we could to make sure that no one is left out there and suffering. The society comes together to make sure everyone has what they need, from him according to his ability to him according to his need. That sounds beautiful. But in reality, when you see the actual effect of socialism in political landscapes, what ends up happening is basically just more power for the politicians. That's the end of it all, more power for the politicians. However, there's an area of society that I could see socialism making some sense, and it's housing. Not that I think the government should be providing houses for people necessarily, but the government should at least allow citizens of a country to be able to live in that country. It seems kind of ridiculous to me, in Trinidad and Tobago specifically, that many of the average citizens cannot afford to buy a home in the country that they are born in. That does not really make sense. It doesn't seem like a fair thing. Now, the thing is, in most countries, if countries were as they existed throughout time, where a country was basically a family that stayed in the same spot for long enough, they multiplied in that spot for long enough, and eventually a country is formed out of this family. So the people of this country are by and large extended relations. They're extended family. And you have your family land in that country. You could go and get a piece of land from your family land and you have a place to live. You have a place to call your own. And that kind of thing still has serious conflict being created around the world because people are serious about a place to call their own, especially if it has been in their family for generations. I saw a bacchanal about that in Tobago with a bakery. But if you're interested in looking at that, Wednesday night, which is tonight, would be Tobago night on the Mindful Life. Tune in and we might talk about some of that. But yeah, it makes sense that people are able to live in the land of their birth. Now, the thing with countries like Trinidad and Tobago is the vast majority of people here were brought here. It's not like we could trace our familial legacy to Trinidad and Tobago. We are people of this soil from the generations, eons ago. No, it's not really like that. We were brought here and brought here under some kind of tough situation. So it's not like the family, our ancestors who were brought here, were able to secure that patrimony to pass down in the generations to make sure that people have something to live on. The thing is, in Trinidad and Tobago, the people who have the land is the state. The vast majority of land in this country is owned by the state, not by families who could pass them down through the generations. And from that angle, the socialist side of distributing that land kind of makes sense to me. I think the state should be, in that socialist style, distributing land to people who need it. Not housing, but land. You see, as it is right now, a house and land in Trinidad and Tobago, you look at a flat house, 3 bedrooms, 2.5 bath, a living room, no set of extra luxuries, something to raise a family, nothing extra. You're on 5,000 square feet of land. You look at that and it could easily run you $2 million. And I'm not even talking about an exclusive community. Here, a regular place, regular residential place could easily run you at $2 million. And when you look at the salaries of people in Trinidad and Tobago, the minimum wage is $17.15. You work 8 hours at $17.50 and you end up with something like $140, $150. And okay, that's minimum wage. You might say, okay, the minimum wage person, really, that's someone just out of school. You're not really at the point to be buying a house. But if you look at the professional class, you look at police officers, teachers, people in the lower ranks, they're talking $8,000 to $12,000 kind of salary. So we round it off at $10,000. If you're making $10,000 a month, we're talking month here, that translates to what? $120,000 a year, TT? How many months will it take you to pay for a $2 million home? At $10,000 a month, $2 million would be 200 months, basically. And 200 months works out around 16 years. 16 years. If you work for $10,000, 16 years, every cent of your entire paycheck. And we know if you work for $10,000, you aren't bringing home $10,000. We know that. But imagine you were. Even if you could have saved every cent of your $10,000 paycheck, it would take you 16 years to be able to save up to buy an average family home in Trinidad and Tobago. Does that make sense? Like, let's think about that realistically. If I work continually for 16 years, should that be only just a home for my family to live in? Like, every waking hour for 16 years I work, I should be able to build a home with my bare hands with that kind of time and labor. If you're talking about time and labor, if you're talking about the labor we put into the society to bring out something, 16 years of labor is not worth a 5,000 square feet piece of land with a small family home on it. It is not worth it. Something is wrong in the system when you look at things like this. And you could get me to be more convinced of, allowing some socialized things inside of the housing area to allow to rectify for some of this. But the thing is for me, I don't think the way how we do socialized housing by and large in the West and in Trinidad and Tobago is how it's supposed to be done. This way where the government goes in and builds a home and then attempts to sell you the home at some kind of reduced price or rent you the home at a reduced rent or something like that, that does not make sense. It does not work. I think, my opinion, if the government really wants people to get homes, sell them the land. Allow them to build their own homes. You'll make work for contractors like me. Yes, I'll get some nice work in the residential area, in the residential conditions, and that works well for many of the smaller contractors. And people would get their homes too. But on the flip side, when the government builds the homes for them, one, it's only the largest contractors get the lion's share of that money, and I don't think that's a coincidence. And two, you end up with lots of social problems because the government ends up ramming them in. The government doesn't understand the nuance of community building to properly build a community. It's astroturfed, it's artificial. You just take a whole set of thousands of people and ram them into an area. It's not going to create a good community. And the thing is, the government isn't good at managing. So even if you have it as rental properties, HDC, 75% Oasis Green residents in arrears, hampering refurbishment plans. Housing Development Corporation plans to meet the residents of Oasis Green's community in Shogunas over the next 3 weeks to hear their concerns over infrastructure issues in the development. So people in this HDC being the government housing agency, people in this HDC development are saying that there are things that need repairs. I've done some work in Oasis Gardens. There are many things that need repairs in that area. But HDC is saying, we are a landlord here. How we repair things would be by the rent we collect. And no one is paying their rent. And it's not just them, it's not just Oasis Greens. More than half HDC renters owing $157 million. Garcia warns of drastic action. The Housing and Development Corporation says it's owed in excess of $157 million in rental arrears, with approximately 55% of renters throughout the country indebted to the corporation in some capacity. Over half of the people renting from HDC owe them. At the Oasis Greens housing, we know that, but the issue of debt has spanned the entire country in communities such as Malabar, Victoria Keys, and Edinburgh 500, with approximately 5,500 of 10,000 renters failing to meet their payment obligations. Garcia, who spoke to the members of the media after an HDC key distribution at the Corinth B development in San Fernando yesterday, said that come next month, the corporation was prepared to take drastic action, which may entail evictions. And this is the problem with government housing. When the government gets in the position of providing housing, and okay, people can't afford to pay for the housing after the government pays the big contractor to build all the homes, and then the government attempts to sell you it. People can't afford. Some of the people in the lower classes making the $1,750 per hour, making the $140 per day, making $5,000 per month. People working KFC making $3,500, $4,000 per month. They cannot afford to pay even the HDC reduced price, 1.5 million, 1.1 million, whatever it is. They can't afford to buy it. So they're saying, at least give us something to rent. We need somewhere to live. And the HDC saying, okay, this is the government's duty. We'll provide them with housing. We provide them a rental property. Now, What's going to happen when they can't afford the rent? Are you going to evict the people that you just put into, well, not just, but that you put in there because you said that these people need a place to live and this is the government's duty? Well, the people still need the place to live and they still cannot afford to pay you the rent. So what now? And you know, I would be tempted very regularly to say the government should forget about all of that, get the money from the people, run this as a real business, and who is owing you money, they should pay you. But for the government to be so strict on people when you're talking about something like housing, something that is a need, it's a necessity, for the government to be so strict with people when the government owns all of the state land in the first place, the reason people cannot get land is because the government has a monopoly on the land. And when you understand how the government got that state land, bear in mind, the government didn't purchase this state land from the natives who were here before. The government didn't purchase this land from the other owners before. That was passed down from the colonial government. So to speak as the modern people speak, the state land that we're referring to right now is stolen land. The state land owned by the government of Trinidad and Tobago basically is stolen land. And if the state owns all this land that they didn't pay for in the first place, it was stolen from the people who previously owned it by the colonists and then handed on to the independent governments once they took over. If that's how the state land was acquired, for you to now tell me that I need to pay for it seems a bit of a stretch. And then especially when I look and I see the government officials, they're out here with hectares of land. I'm struggling for 5,000 square feet to pay all my life savings to get 5,000 square feet of land to eke out a living on. And some of these people have hectares of land. War of words over properties erupts between Sinan and Mac. A war of words is being waged between Works and Transport Minister Rohan Sinanan and Opposition Senator Wade Mark, with each accusing the other of using their position improperly for personal gain. At a media conference at his Port of Spain office yesterday, Sinanan responded to claims made by Mark the previous day about the ownership of 2.743 hectares of land in Sangregandi, part of which was acquired by the state for construction of the Kanapo Bridge in 2018. So the allegation here is that in 2009, Mr. Sinanan bought a large piece of land in Grandy. Who knows how he bought that? He bought a large piece of land, and now the state is attempting to buy it back from him in order to build a bridge. He is saying that when he bought that land, he was not in the government, you know, he had nothing to do with these decisions. And okay, legally, I could understand what he's saying may stand up, but you must understand, that's a hard thing for everyone else to believe that I don't think Mr. Sinanan would be a government minister in 2015. Was he a government minister from 2015 already? I'm not sure. He would be a PNM government minister in the current cabinet. But just a decade ago, he had nothing to do with PNM. I struggle to believe that. And his allegations in his defense of this, his allegations here aren't necessarily that he doesn't have the land. Part of his allegations is pointing the finger back at the opposition member who made the allegations against him. Sinanan said he had questions for Mark. When he was a speaker, what was he the beneficial owner, directly or indirectly, of any HDC houses that rent was paid for? You're understanding the allegation being made here. That when the now opposition was in governance, one of their members possibly had HDC property renting out to other people. The HDC that is supposed to be there to make sure every resident, every citizen of Trinidad and Tobago has access to a piece of land, a home to live in this country. And then, if these are the possibilities that even inside of the HDC right now, where they're supposed to at least be on that socialized side of housing, we're seeing that the government is still stealing much from us. Would it then be fair to really and truly hammer out against the people owing rental for a couple months? If people in governance are making off with hectares of land, are owning HDC houses and renting them out to who they want, can we really say it's a just system for us to be pounding down the doors of renters to take money from them so that they could live in this country? Now, the thing is, I don't rent an HDC home. I don't have an HDC home. I could understand the unfairness when you look at this from citizen to citizen. People who have to go out there on the free market. You have to go out there, and if you have to own a home, you have to somehow try and acquire that $2 million. And you're looking at people getting a free government home, and they're renting there, and they're not paying any rent, and that's not fair to you. But then it might not be fair to you, but it's not fair to them to take money from them when the same government ahead of them is also doing similar. And we're talking about a place to live here. And in countries like Trinidad and Tobago, it's not just the state. It's not just the state through the history of the colonial powers who has that land. And I was looking at a very interesting story out from Couva showing where some of this land ownership is. Couva Village faces eviction from Anglican Church. The residents of a village in Couva are facing eviction from the Anglican Church, which is trying to reclaim the lands on which the village was built over about 100 years ago. On Saturday, the residents of Milner Village off Carlos Street called for an urgent meeting with the board of the Anglican Church to find a way to save their homes. The village, which is located off Carlos Street and the southern main road in Couva, is home to 120 people. The majority of these people are pensioners. In response to the concerns raised by Milner Village residents, Anglican Bishop Claude Berkeley said he was confident that the board would be willing to meet with them to address their concerns. Berkeley said, "My knowledge is that the church has been striving to regularize tenancy on lands across Trinidad and Tobago, which it owns." You see, it wasn't just the government. It wasn't just the state. It was whichever institutions had power back in those days. And those are the problems we run up to in countries like this. You want to know why the price of land, the price of property is the way it is in Trinidad and Tobago? Well, find out how much land in Trinidad and Tobago is owned by the Anglican Church or by the Catholic Church or any other religious organization. See about that. See how much land is owned by the state. See how the state disperses with those lands. See how much government ministers, how many government ministers own large swaths of land across the country. And here's a question I would like answered. Legally in Trinidad and Tobago, you cannot sell state land. The state cannot sell state land. And just about all the land in the country was at one point in time state land. How did ownership of the land change from the state to these many private owners that abound around Trinidad and Tobago? Answer me that question. That's my question for you. You can feel free to drop a question for me in the comments if you have something to say. That's all I have for now. I hope you're educated, informed, or entertained, and I will see you in the next video.